Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or indeed good evening, depending on your time zone and depending on when you are watching this. It is Monday, the 18th of May, 2020. Welcome to a brand new Monday and the start of a brand new week. I'm James Innes, and this is my daily YouTube show, The Jobs Guru. Please do think about subscribing. In today's show, I'm going to be taking a look at the latest jobs, career and employment news, specifically talking about the death of the office. I do reckon these rumours are greatly exaggerated though. I'll be covering a question from one of my viewers examining whether or not an employer can now force you to continue working from home. And having delighted in a number of weird and wonderful interview questions last week, this week we're going to be looking at some of the toughest and nastiest ones, starting with, see this pen? Where's that prop gone? There we are. See this pen? Can you sell it to me? There we go. I'll keep that handy for later. Now, if you have any questions or comments as you watch, make sure you keep your props closer to hand, James, then please do let me have them in the comments section down below. And if you like what you see, then please do hit that YouTube thumbs up. So first, as usual, I've had a good read of all the main news headlines, and in particular the jobs, employment and careers related headlines. So what's gone down, in modern parlance, over the weekend? Well, the news obviously continues to be dominated by this whole coronavirus crisis. Some good news, some bad news. A lot about the whole school reopening issue, of course. But I think what most caught my eye was news on the Brexit front. Did someone just mention the B word? Now, I would admit, I am a Remainer, or as some of my Brexiteer friends prefer to call me, a Remoaner. So maybe it's hard for me to be objective. But when I see headlines like, Brexit trade talks on verge of collapse as UK negotiator says change in EU approach needed, The Telegraph, and The Guardian with British negotiator gives EU 2-week deadline to drop ideological stance, well, it makes my blood boil. I'm not by any means a hardcore Remainer or Remoaner. The EU is far from perfect, and I'm not a big fan of Michel Barnier either, for that matter. But come on, now is not the time for the UK to be taking or making a stand on the Brexit front. We kind of have other things to worry about, like tens of thousands of people dying and hundreds of thousands losing their jobs. Surely, the sensible thing to do would be to shelve this whole Brexit mess for 6 months, a year even. Then again, maybe it's just what the government needs to detract attention from some elements of the way things have been handled on the COVID-19 front. Or am I a cynic? Anyway, on to the jobs, careers and employment news. The Guardian's work and career section headlines with, Britons back at work could be using unsafe PPE experts warn. We've had a whole week of headlines like that, in fact. The FT goes with transforming telemedicine to combat a health crisis. Interesting piece there. But what I found most interesting was a cluster of little stories along the lines of, the office is dead, long live the office. I'll explain. We've got two very interesting pieces in the FT. One is the rise and fall of the office, and the other, we will miss the office if it dies. The Wall Street Journal has, when it's time to go back to the office, will it still be there? And then there's The Telegraph with, ending office life altogether will be a big mistake. This is all very interesting. I already reported last week that Twitter has decided to allow a large chunk of their employees to work from home forever, and I applauded that. I consider it to be really rather pioneering, and as it happens, I'm a bit of a pioneer myself on this front. My own business, the James Innes Group, we started closing down offices one by one several years ago, and my staff now all largely work from home. I've already been through this learning curve and know that there are both advantages and disadvantages. Facebook and Google, they've told their staff there's no need to return until 2021, i.e. next year. I've got a cousin who works for LinkedIn, and they've been told something very similar. But Twitter has actually gone so far as to say forever. Might they come to regret it? That's the question. I hope not. I really believe it's something which can be done, but it does have to be managed ever so carefully. I do like the way in the Telegraph piece that Robin Pagnamenta has phrased himself. He says, how do you place a value on that impromptu meeting in a corridor or in the lift with a colleague that allows you to amicably resolve a pressing issue? An excellent point. But this is exactly where technology has a huge role to play. Getting the right systems and applications in place is vital for maintaining appropriate communication channels and for encouraging collaboration. Platforms like Discord, Zoom, Google Meet, etc. They're ideal for bringing people together, not just professionally, but also personally. But you really do need to put some thought into it. At the James Innes Group, we use Discord for our daily scrum, as well as more lengthy meetings, but my team of digital nomads also uses that platform for much more. much more interesting things, in fact, like our company book club and regular pub quizzes without the pub. Most companies aren't going to go this far. Many won't be able to for various operational reasons, yeah. But many just won't want to. There will be resistance, and often for the wrong reasons. What is crystal clear, though, is that even if the office isn't going to disappear completely, it's certainly going to be changing fairly radically to survive in the face of COVID-19. So, on to that question from one of my viewers. Today, my question is from Jeremy in Edinburgh, the capital of Scotland. Jeremy's question: is it just me, or is working from home an absolute nightmare? There is literally no escape. I never thought I would miss the commute, but what was once the most stressful part of my day now sounds like bliss. Trouble is, I have a nasty feeling that my employer has realised that having more of us working from home is cheaper and is going to want to force me to continue doing so when lockdown ends. Can they do this? What rights do I have if I really don't want to do this? Well, Jeremy, this is an excellent and pretty timely question. I'm getting more and more questions like this, and I'm in fact going to be discussing this whole issue at length later in today's show. But my advice to you is your first stop is most definitely your employment contract. Check to see if you have what is known as a mobility clause in there. If you do, and most people actually do, then in theory your employer can change your work location within bounds. They should consult with you first, but if you signed this contract, which of course you did, then you agreed to it, I'm afraid. They have to be reasonable in this respect. Indeed, they have a legal duty to act reasonably. So do outline to them the exact reasons why you feel that they should at least give your point of view due consideration. Clearly, it's something about which you feel pretty strongly. So, do communicate this to them. And hopefully they'll decide not to enforce this cruel and unusual punishment on you a day longer, because it does sound like you're suffering, poor Jeremy. I am always open to new and interesting questions from my viewers. So if you have a jobs, careers, or employment-related question for me, then do please type it into that comment section below, and I may well feature it in a future episode of this show. And if I do, then there will be a Jobs Guru coffee mug winging its way to you in the post. Limited edition. Collector's item. Well, this is a glass of water. Alas, the stock hasn't arrived yet, but we're expecting it to drop in on Wednesday. So, please, questions in the comment section below. Now, each day, as well as answering, as I just did, one viewer's specific question, I also look into a specific issue which has been raised by a number of different viewers. And today, following on pretty neatly from Jeremy's question and the scintillating topic of, of contract law, I shine my spotlight on so-called implied terms. Now, don't fall asleep here, because this is important. Very few people have even heard of this concept, but it really is important. Implied terms are terms of your contract of employment which are not actually written down in the contract. Sounds a little weird, doesn't it? I should imagine you probably haven't heard of it before. Let me explain. Essentially, there are certain conditions which are basically taken for granted, like your employer having to provide you with a safe place of work, or you undertaking not to steal their stationery. But of particular importance are those terms which are deemed to be implied through what is called custom and practice. Things which have been automatically received over a significant period of time and are therefore expected. A good example might be a Christmas bonus. Okay? Implied terms. Bear it in mind, you live and you learn. Not the most exciting of topics, contract law. I really do appreciate that. But it can be pretty important. Now, on to the main topic I wish to discuss with you today. And this is the issue raised pretty perfectly by Jeremy's question. And it's one I'm hearing more and more often. Can an employer force you to remain working from home? The possibility of remote working becoming very much the new normal for companies and employees across the country is something I spoke about at length last week on the show. So if you haven't seen that, I focus very much on how people have adapted to working from home, even companies who had previously been resistant to remote working, and how this could in fact lead to much greater flexibility being given to employees in the future. But what about those people who have been forced to work from home recently and absolutely hated it? Is this new normal going to become their reality, or in Jeremy's case, nightmare, whether they like it or not? Is there any way that they can refuse to work from home and still keep their job? For advocates of working from home, the thought of people not enjoying this may seem unusual, but let's consider some of the possible reasons why it might not suit everyone. One, personal and professional lives become blurred, no longer distinct. This is especially apparent for those working from home with family members, or indeed those working completely on their own. Two, lack of ability to interact with other people, which makes solving problems or working on shared problems and collaborating more challenging. 3, perhaps missing out on the social side of working in a shared space, having coffee breaks and lunch with colleagues, drinks after work. And yeah, another one, 4, inability to get immediate technical support should the need arise. That can be a big problem too, working from home. Now, all of these things are potentially problematic on their own, but you combine them and it's very easy to see how one's productivity and motivation performance may be affected. The potential impact on one's mental health and well-being must also be taken into account. So let's now look at this issue from a legal and HR perspective. Hopefully you've got a contract of employment in place between you and your employer, which defines the relationship between the two of you, as well as the main terms of work. As I said earlier, many contracts contain what is called a mobility clause, and if yours does, this means you have effectively agreed to your employer being able to change your work location, and this includes changing that work location to your own home in many cases. A consultation process should be part of any significant change such as this, so that the employer is seen to be acting reasonably, and trade unions may need to get involved if they are recognised in your industry. But as long as appropriate preparations are made and adequate consultation takes place, your employer can indeed enforce working from home. However, I think it is to their advantage to ensure that this new way of working doesn't impact your productivity and performance. So make sure you use that consultation process to raise your concerns and ensure that potential solutions are in place. I do feel there's perhaps a very important distinction to be made between working from home and working from home during a global pandemic. These are not the same thing. For those of you out there who have hated working from home over the past few months, you may feel very differently about it once lockdown comes to an end. Imagine the flexibility of being able to continue working from home whilst also popping into the office once or twice a week as needed to sort out certain issues, whatever, to collaborate with colleagues, etc. How about being encouraged to continue with your daily exercise? But now you can also pop into your local gym, go for a swim, join your friends for a run. For those of you who have struggled with working from home whilst also looking after your kids, and do I empathise with you? Now picture the same scenario, but with daycare and schools once open again. It's a thought, isn't it? Now, as someone who ran his business entirely from home in the first year or two, initially working out of my bedroom 20 odd years ago, through the days where I did have office space that I went into, I could drop into when I was needed, etc., and right up to now in lockdown, where I've again been working from home, this time with 3 young kids and a menagerie of pets. My wife's a vet. I have literally seen it all in terms of working environments. But if lockdown remote working is your first experience of working from home, I would respectfully suggest, you may want to consider waiting until you have experienced it under quite different circumstances from lockdown before raising your concerns with your employer. Naturally, I'd be really interested and I really welcome any thoughts, questions, ideas, comments that you may have on this subject in the comment section below. Share your experiences with us. Now, as you may or may not know, I've written a fair few books. In fact, I'm the UK's best-selling careers author, and amongst my titles is the Interview, Question and Answer book, available in all good bookshops. In each episode of this YouTube show, I take questions from that book and look at how to answer them. Last week, it was from the Weird and Wonderful Questions chapter, and this week it's going to be from the chapter entitled The Top 25 Tough Questions, Taking the Heat. So here's today's. I've lost that prop again. So here's today's. See this pen? I can see it now, but I keep losing it. See this pen? Can you sell it to me? Okay. Obviously, similar questions include, see this pencil, paperclip, computer, desk, mobile phone, shoe, whatever comes to hand, and can you sell it to me? But let's go back to our one. See this pen? Can you sell it to me? You might think this question is only likely to be asked if you work in sales, but you'd be wrong. It can be asked of almost anyone, regardless of whether sales skills are important to their job. It's a question which forces a candidate to think on their feet whilst under pressure. And this can tell an interviewer quite a lot about a candidate, not least how clearly they're able to think and to communicate. It's a classic question. Some might say cliche, but it is, one that nonetheless features regularly in interviews. So, how to answer it? Now, there are 2 possible ways, depending on your line of work. If you do work in sales, then you shouldn't need too much advice from me as to how to handle this question. You simply need to demonstrate your standard sales pattern techniques to the interviewer, inventing pricing, discount offers, whatever payment terms as you go. The precise details are not important. It's the methods you employ which count. Identifying the customer's needs and matching those to the specific benefits of the product, etc. If, on the other hand, you don't work in sales, which is the majority of us, then this question is going to be a little trickier to handle. Don't let yourself be panicked, though. The interviewer knows full well that you are not used to selling, and they won't be expecting you to have a whole arsenal of sales techniques at your disposal. And don't take yourself too seriously. Good people are always light-hearted and friendly. So concentrate on talking the interviewer into expressing a need or needs. That's the first step. Then describing the object, including both its features and, more importantly, its benefits. Discuss pricing, which you just invent off the top of your head. And then move in for the kill. Ask them directly for the sale. Now, as usual, I've plucked an example answer from my book for you, if I can find the appropriate piece of paper. I'm sure you'll agree with me that a pen is vital to your day-to-day work, and it's therefore important to make sure you've got just the right one. This pen is solidly constructed so as to be durable for everyday use, even if it rolls off your desk onto the floor. It has a plentiful ink reserve, so there's less chance of the pen running dry at a critical moment. It fits comfortably into the hand and even has a clip so you can safely attach it to your jacket pocket when you're on the move. I can offer you this pen at the very reasonable price of 20 pence. However, if you were to take 3, I'm sure your colleagues would also be interested, then I could offer you a 20% discount, making a total of just 48 pence. How many would you like? Now, a final word of warning here. This is a question where, unless you work in sales, it is particularly important to convince the interviewer that your answer is not rehearsed. If they can clearly identify that you've planned, prepared and rehearsed for this question, it's going to take a whole lot of impact out of your answer. Now, I have mentioned in a previous episode of this show that I'm currently updating this particular book, the Interview Question and Answer book. I'm working on a brand new edition. So if you've got any interview questions you've experienced, which you think I should be considering for possible inclusion, do please let me know in that comments section below. So now, that is pretty much all for today, Monday. Just 2 more things. First, the usual but important YouTube requests. If you have any questions or comments about this episode, about the show in general, or indeed about life, the universe, the ivory billed woodpecker, whatever, do please let me have them below. If you like this episode, then do please hit it with the YouTube thumbs up. And do think about subscribing to my channel, please, if you haven't already. If you have, then please do ring that bell so that you can receive notifications when I upload new episodes. Is that joke wearing thin now? Do tell me in the comments. Not that it'll stop me. And finally, let me tell you what's happening tomorrow. In tomorrow's show, Tuesday, I'll be chatting about a variety of things, including the topic of NHS staff from overseas having their residency permits extended for 1 year. But what happens to them after that 1 year? Do we send them home again? And next, in the interview question series, we're going to be looking at what character flaws or personality defects you might have. I do hope that you will tune in. Thank you for watching today. Keep safe and be well, my friends. Goodbye.